Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to tell you 5 more things that I learned from my struggle with eating disorders, and if you stick around, I'll give you a bonus one. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you never miss a video. I upload a new video every Wednesday. My name is Kevin, and I help entrepreneurs and professionals control what they eat so they can become the healthiest and most productive versions of themselves. The first thing I learned is my hunger mechanism was always working. I thought for a while that my brain was broken somehow and that it needed to be repaired and that there was like structural damage to my brain. That's why I was constantly binging and starving and overeating. I could just never eat right because I thought my brain was irreparably damaged and that I would always have to abstain from anything with high amounts of salt, sugar, and fat. But what I learned later on is that I just needed to reprogram the beliefs and the thoughts in my brain. I really think that all of our decisions stem from our beliefs, even the most mundane decisions. So for example, I believed that I couldn't have anything with fat or sugar in my home or else I would eat all of it. And oftentimes I did, and that's why I believed that. But I believed that because I had binged on it so long and so often, and so I began to think that my brain just couldn't control it. But then I realized that I absolutely could control it and that I could choose to eat smaller portions of it or not eat it at all. I realized that abstinence wasn't really an answer or a solution to my problems. I didn't need to avoid a million different things to recover or to eat right. I could eat anything at any time, anywhere, and have absolute control. I was so used to plowing through my hunger and ignoring those cues that I had that it was easy to believe that my brain wasn't working, that my appetite was out of control, that the mechanisms in my brain that control hunger were broken. But I learned over time that I could listen to those hunger cues and respond to them in an empowered way. The second thing I learned was my metabolism was always fine. My metabolism was never broken or damaged. I think a lot of people who have the same problem that I had believe that their metabolism suck or they have a weak metabolism. I remember I took a survey one time and it asked me, how do you rate your metabolism? And I think a lot of people blame their metabolic rates or their age or their activity level. They use that as an excuse for why they can't control what to eat or why they can't lose weight. But I binged, purged, overate, and did it all for 10 years of my life. And when I finally stopped, I realized that my metabolism was just fine. I didn't suffer from what I call the biggest loser effect. A lot of the people on the biggest loser lost a tremendous amount of weight. They overexercised, they basically starved themselves, but they did it in a very short amount of time, and they were very, very aggressive with their weight loss goals, and I can talk about this later, but I never experienced that myself. My metabolism was always fine. It was actually a lot more resilient than I thought. I thought that once I stopped that I would never be able to eat anything again because my metabolism was so bad. But it's not. I still eat a good amount of food now and I don't gain any weight and it's not really a problem. So believe that your metabolism is fine. Believe that it is more resilient than you think it is. It can actually tolerate a lot of bad behavior and a lot of bad decisions, and it can still keep going. The third thing that I learned is that environment never really mattered. So many times I attached my hope of recovery to a change in my environment. I thought that if I left my mother's home, or if I left my apartment, or if I left some place and I just had a new environment and a change of scenery, that everything would be okay. But that was never true. My bad behavior and my bad choices followed me wherever I went. I binged, purged, starved in about 12 different states. So it really didn't matter. It didn't matter what the weather was. It could be rainy, it could be sunny, hot, cold. Didn't matter. I could have a really good job, I could have a bad job. It didn't matter. Nothing in my environment had any effect on my behavior. The only thing that affected my behavior was my decisions. I always chose to make wrong decisions, and all of my eating disorders were entirely my choice. I know that's not really comfortable to believe. Why would I choose to do that? But in the moment when I had the decision to binge or not, I always chose to binge, at least most of the time. And the reason why is because I thought, at least in that moment, my life would be better if I consumed a large volume of food. I could always just pay it off later. Looking back, I realized what a horrible decision that was. Don't believe for a second that a new job or a new relationship or a new house or a diploma or whatever it is going to fix the problem. It's not. Environment has nothing to do with your behavior. It's really convenient to believe that circumstances will change everything because it absolves you of the responsibility to modify your behavior and start making choices. It's up to you to say no when you want to say yes and to say yes when you want to say no. Circumstances and environment can't change any of that. It's all up to you. The fourth thing I learned was no particular diet was the answer. For so long, I read books and read blogs and message forums and watched videos on various diets, and I was always looking for that holy grail of the diet world. I was always looking for that ideal diet, the perfect diet. In fact, there are books out there that talk about, quote unquote, the perfect diet. Now I realize what a mirage that was. I was always chasing something that never existed. I was always looking for the diet that would solve all my problems. If I only ate this list of foods and avoided this list of foods, and everything would be okay. I realized that life isn't so simple and that you can't codify diet. You can't just make a list of rules and follow them every day. Life's a little messier than that, and we find ourselves in circumstances where we're not entirely in control. So a lot of times you might find yourself in a hotel or in a conference room or at a party or at a social event. You're not always going to be in the confines of your kitchen where you can control everything. And I just learned that I had to adapt to the circumstances. I couldn't always find the food that I really wanted to eat. Sometimes I'm in a restaurant and it's really heavy on the cream and the meat, and I just have to do the best that I can. You shouldn't make your diet the number one priority in your life, and that's what I did for a long time. I thought that if I just followed a certain list of rules that I had made in myself, a very convoluted list, I'll say, then everything would be okay, and then I would have good health and that I would be happy. In fact, the more rules I made and the more foods that I banned, the worse my behavior became and the less happy I was. The less I started to focus on my diet and the food that I was eating and my health, the happier I became. I don't want to discount health and diet. I'm not saying it's not important. It absolutely is important, and you shouldn't be ignorant about it, but focusing on it too much can actually make you less happy and less healthy in the long run. The fifth thing that I learned over many years is that I was choosing to behave this way. I know I touched on this a little earlier, and I know it's going to ruffle some feathers and it's kind of controversial, but I chose eating disorders for 10 years. Like I said, when I reached that juncture where I could either overeat and binge or go the other way and do something else, most of the time I always chose to binge. Now, why would I do that? Why would I deliberately spend the resources that I earned to put a bunch of junk into my system and make me less healthy and less happy? It's because in that moment it provided temporary relief. Consuming a large volume of food releases opioids in your brain, so like opium-like substances or endorphins, and it provides a temporary rush. It gives you this feeling that there are no boundaries in this world and that you can do whatever you want to do because there are no consequences for that. Imagine living a day where you didn't have to pay for anything, where you didn't have to suffer the consequences of anything you did. You just could do whatever you wanted. It would kind of be like going to heaven and meeting 57 virgins. Now, in retrospect, it seems like a really awful decision to make because it killed my self-esteem. It destroyed my health. It made me feel bad. I had no self-confidence. I couldn't participate in the activities I wanted to do. So it seems crazy, like, why would I choose that 3-4 times a week? It's because in that specific moment, it felt better to binge, overeat, and purge than it was to just be normal and go do something else. I guess it's easy to say right now in retrospect, now that I can see the amount of damage that I incurred, but in that moment, it felt like it was the only option I had. I felt like it was the only thing that I could do. And it felt like the escape of all that sugar and fat was better than dealing with reality. And since you're still here, I'm gonna give you one more thing that I learned. I think this is really critical. I mentioned this very briefly in a previous step, but focus less on your weight loss and your diet, and you'll probably be healthier and you'll reach your weight loss goals faster than you think. I realized that the more I focused on what I was eating and my diet and the number on the scale, it's like the less success I had in that department. When I was weighing myself every day and counting all my calories and logging all my food, that's when I was the most frustrated, and that's when I had the least amount of success. I'm not saying you can't weigh yourself every day. Sometimes I weigh myself 3-4 times in a week. I would say at least once a week is good. When I started focusing on other goals in life, and I started focusing on other aspects, and I started to focus on other areas of my life where I wanted to improve, the weight loss kind of took care of itself. Constantly obsessing about a number on a scale or how much you're eating every day, it robs you of joy and happiness, and it actually makes you less healthy in the long run. If you think about naturally thin people, they don't really obsess about it. They just kind of do it. It's just intuitive for them, and that's the place where you have to get to. I realized that constantly thinking about my weight and what I was eating was making me less happy and less healthy. I thought for a long time that I had to measure everything every day, and it had to be my number one goal in life, or else I would never reach my goal. But I realized that the opposite was true. I know this is hard to believe sometimes, because a lot of times dieters and people who trying to lose weight and become healthy are type A. They like to have that sense of control. They like to know everything about every product, and they carefully scan every nutrition label, and they look at all the ingredients, and they use trackers and spreadsheets and whatever. They like to know exactly what's going in. I totally get that. So this is going to be a hard one for a lot of people, relinquishing that control. Question for you is, which one of these things that I learned really resonate with you? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think your hunger mechanism is broken? Do you think your metabolism is bad? Do you think that there is one ideal diet for everybody or for you? If you're struggling with the same kind of problems that I had, like binging, overeating, overexercising, purging, whatever it is, I have some free resources for you. You can go to my website at kevinburciaga.com, and I have a free video there. And in that video, you'll discover 5 action steps you can take today to control what you eat and become the healthiest version of yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.